The holiday season starts with Thanksgiving, and with the holiday season comes traditions. For a lot of us, some traditions will look differently, depending on who's vaccinated, who's vulnerable, who's able to travel, and who has access to internet for Zoom calls. Traditions include things like looking forward to eating a food that's only made once a year, or maybe getting up at 6 a.m. on Friday morning so you can get a great deal at that once-a-year sale, either online or in a store. Maybe your traditions include getting together with family and friends, or you're simply just looking forward to spending time with them in some way. Some people have a tradition that when they gather for their meal, in person or on the phone or online, they go around and they share something that they are thankful for. When my sister and her family moved back to the area, my family started the tradition of having Sunday night family dinners. And when we first started family dinners, there was a time for a few months when my two nieces, who were about 3 years old and 5 years old at the time, there was a time when they started the tradition of their own. Once everyone was sitting at the table, they would get out of their chairs and individually they went to stand next to someone at the table and asked, "What are you thankful for? What are you thankful for?" Honestly, it was the highlight of my week, watching them go around to each person and hearing how my family responds. Sometimes the girls, they would make multiple laps around the table, asking each of us several times, "What are you thankful for?" And while our food was getting cold, we kept answering them. And even though sometimes someone had to think for a few seconds before they answered, we always would have a response. We always would come up with something that we are thankful for, even after the 5th or 6th time around. Now, I'm not saying that we need to be grateful all of the time, because there are times when we should not be thankful. There are people who don't have the necessities of life, those who are sick, those who are taken advantage of, and those who are living in unhealthy relationships, people who are experiencing loss because of natural disasters. We've had horrible things happen in communities in Wisconsin this last week. When we are overwhelmed by grief or loss, which may be true for some of us right now, I think it can be difficult or even seem impossible to be grateful. And that's okay. God understands that gratitude is sometimes beyond our grasp, which is when we can rely on each other to give thanks in our place. And I'll admit that it is sometimes easier to give thanks and voice gratitude than others. For example, when my sweet nieces would come up to me at the dinner table and take my hand and look at me with those big eyes and say, "Auntie Christy, what are you thankful for?" It didn't take me too long to come up with a response. But some days when I'm frustrated, tired, busy, or fed up with everyone and everything, if someone other than an adorable 3 or 5-year-old would ask me that, "What are you thankful for?" I might have a difficult time thinking of something. Maybe you know what that feels like. I'm guessing we all have at some point, especially this past year and a half. I was reading about gratitude and thankfulness, and I came across some words from somebody that talked about how our culture today seems to be influenced more by accusations and excuses and anger and violence than love, grace, mercy, and gratitude. But they talked about how in our world, in our families, in our community, and in our church, we desperately need more expressions of gratitude. And they said something like gratitude can be a powerful response because it gives this countercultural witness that has the power to shape those around us, to push back the tide of resentment and complaint that ails us. And it makes room for this fresh appreciation of God's renewing and saving grace. So we're going to try something that we haven't done before, but practicing gratitude. And one good thing about online messages like this is that we can do things we haven't done before, be creative in different ways, and you can pause me too if you need some more time. But I'm going to ask you some questions, And I invite you to pause me to answer the questions with people you're watching with, so you can talk out loud, or if you're by yourself, I invite you to get a piece of paper to write the answers down so you can intentionally think about your answers as we talk about gratitude. So my first question is, who are you grateful for? Who are you grateful for? You can pause the video, share, or write down your answer. If you don't want to do any of that, just keep listening. But who are you thankful for? And now you think about people in your life that maybe you normally wouldn't give thanks for. Who are those people in your life that challenge you or make life inconvenient for you? Somebody you wouldn't normally be thankful for. Maybe you don't want to write names down or say names, but somebody who's challenged you. Maybe it's a trait. Something, that one thing you still can give thanks for. What can you give thanks for? How can you express gratitude or thankfulness? How can you make being grateful something that is more a part of your everyday practices? Do you think you could make a conscious choice to be grateful for at least one small thing every day? What would it look like if you gave gratitude more power in your life? More so than maybe you do with anger or fear or frustration. As you thought about those questions, maybe you reflected on joys and sorrows, challenges and triumphs, or hurts and healings in your life. Whatever you've been thinking about, talking about, or writing about, we give thanks today because in all of those times and with all of those people, God has been with us. So we give thanks for God's love and forgiveness that gives us new life in the midst of everything that happens. We give thanks for all that God has given us. And we give thanks for the opportunity to simply give thanks. I'd like to leave you today with the words of Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord on all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is God that made us, and we are God's. We are God's people, the sheep of God's pasture. Enter God's gates with thanksgiving and God's courts with praise. Give thanks to God, bless God's name. For the Lord is good. God's steadfast love endures forever, and God's faithfulness to all generations. I hope you all are able to give thanks in the coming days, and I hope that you enjoy the time that you have either by yourself or with family or friends, that you stay safe and healthy. Take care.